I didn't even want to be at that building in the first place. My friend Josh had invited me to his coworker's New Year's Eve party, one of those things thrown on a penthouse floor that sounded fancier than it actually was. I'd said no 3 times, but around 10:30 p.m., alone in my apartment with cold leftover pad thai and nothing but, "Are you coming?" text blowing up my phone, I gave in. I figured I'd show up, smile through 2 drinks, and bounce before midnight. No one would care. No one ever cared. I never made it to the party. The building was this sleek high-rise in Midtown. Glass, marble lobby, concierge that didn't even glance up when I walked in. I hit the button for the elevator and waited. When the doors opened, I was surprised to find someone already inside. A guy, early 30s maybe, wearing a navy pea coat and AirPods, leaning against the wall like he was trying not to exist. He glanced up when I stepped in but didn't say anything. Just nodded, then returned to whatever was playing in his ears. I hit 17. He was already going to 18. The doors closed. It was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then there was a lurch, a loud metallic clunk, and everything stopped. The lights didn't go out completely, but they flickered enough to make my stomach twist. He pulled his AirPods out. We both just kind of looked at each other. Did we just... I started. "Yeah," he said, stepping away from the wall. We stopped. He hit the emergency button. A robotic voice crackled through, saying the standard lines about delays, help being on the way, blah blah, then silence again. I let out a breath and rubbed the back of my neck. "Of course." "Happy New Year," he muttered. I let out a small laugh, more out of disbelief than anything. This is such a cliché. He smirked, arms crossed. 2 strangers trapped in an elevator on New Year's Eve? Yeah. All we need now is a bottle of champagne and some unresolved emotional trauma. I grinned despite myself. I left my trauma in my coat pocket downstairs. Damn. That made him laugh. Actually laugh. It echoed a little too loud in the small space, but it broke the tension. He looked over at me. "I'm Theo, by the way." "Mark." We shook hands awkwardly like we were meeting at a wedding and not stuck in a box between floors. The minutes passed. My phone had no signal. Neither did his. We both sat down eventually, backs against opposite walls, trying to make the best of it. "Where were you headed?" he asked after a bit. "Some rooftop party. Friend of a friend. I was probably going to ghost before midnight." He tilted his head. "Anti-New Year's guy?" "Anti-crowds. Anti-small talk. Anti-being surrounded by people pretending they're thrilled about the next year." He smiled, nodding slowly. "Fair enough. What about you?" I asked. 18th floor? "My sister's place. Family thing. Everyone's bringing someone, and I'm the designated single guy with a cheese plate." "Oof," I said. "That's brutal." "Yeah. My mom keeps trying to introduce me to her friend's son. Every time she says you'd get along, he's also into that lifestyle. Like it's a yoga class and not me being gay." I snorted. "God, same. My aunt calls it your situation, like I've got a medical condition." He laughed again. "Well, good to know we're both cursed." I nodded, a little surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. There was something about the situation that stripped away the usual barriers. No apps, no fake charm. Just 2 guys and the loud hum of nothing. Time passed, and the silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't awkward. At some point, he pulled out a mini flask from his coat pocket. "I wasn't kidding about the cheese plate," he said, "but I brought backup." He took a sip and passed it to me. Whiskey. Warm and harsh, but it helped. "Cheers to getting stuck," I said. "Cheers to not spending midnight alone, technically." We passed the flask back and forth a few times. Nothing excessive. Just enough to take the edge off. At 11:38, according to Theo's watch, I finally said, "Is it weird? I don't even know what I wanted out of tonight." He looked at me, brow raised. "Like, emotionally?" "Yeah, I guess. Like everyone's always got these big expectations for New Year's. Resolutions, parties, kisses, declarations of change. But I didn't make any. I just didn't want to feel like I was standing still." Theo was quiet for a second, then said, Maybe standing still is not the worst thing. Sometimes that's when shit catches up with you. In a good way. You a therapist or something? No, he said, smiling. Bartender, I laughed. Close enough. He leaned back again, looking up at the flickering panel above us. I think I kinda needed to get stuck. I've been running from something for months. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. It was in the way his voice dipped when he said it. The kind of thing that didn't need a follow-up. I think that's when I realized how small the space between us had become. Physically, yeah, we were both sitting on the same side of the elevator now, but emotionally too. Something about the situation, the alcohol, the shared bitterness toward the holiday, it created this strange closeness. One that felt realer than any of the forced intimacy at parties or on dating apps. We were quiet again. Until he asked, do you ever miss it? Miss what? Being loved. The word hung between us. I swallowed. Yeah, every day. Theo nodded. Me too. Me too. And then the lights flickered again. A soft jolt passed through the elevator. Somewhere above us, gears clicked to life. We both looked up. The elevator creaked, then started moving. Slowly. Level by level. My stomach tightened. The ride was almost over, but somehow that didn't feel like a relief. The elevator jerked again, just as we started moving, enough to make us both instinctively grab onto the handrails. It wasn't smooth. The whole thing felt like it was being dragged up by some reluctant machine that hadn't had maintenance in a decade. Okay, Theo muttered, staring up at the blinking floor numbers. Here we go. We both watched as it crawled toward the 4th floor. Then, nothing. It stopped again. The lights dimmed back to that weird yellow glow. I looked over at him. That can't be a good sign. He blew out a breath and leaned back. Nope. We waited. Another 10 seconds. Another 20. Then the robotic voice returned. We are experiencing a temporary power issue. Emergency services are aware. Please remain calm. I couldn't help but laugh. Just this soft, tired exhale that sounded like defeat. Theo cracked a grin. Midnight in a stuck elevator? Kinda poetic. I checked my phone again, even though I already knew. Still no service, no signal. No way to tell what time it actually was. But then, Theo lifted his wrist. 11:47, he said, tapping his watch. 13 minutes to the end of the year. 13 minutes, I echoed. Think we'll make it out before the ball drops? Depends if the building hired real electricians or just someone's cousin with a YouTube certification, I chuckled. So, probably not. We both sat back down, this time closer than before. The cold floor didn't feel as bad now. Maybe thanks to the whiskey. Maybe because sitting near him felt easier than the other side of the box. He rubbed his hands together and blew into them. My toes are numb. This is going to be the weirdest New Year's I've ever had. Same, I said. And I once got dumped at 12:01 while wearing a 2022 or bust hat, so that's saying something. He winced. Ouch, that's brutal. You? He tilted his head. Last year, I got ghosted halfway through a house party. Went to get drinks for both of us. Came back and he was gone. Took my coat too. Damn, I said. So you've got abandonment and theft trauma. Right? He shook his head with a grin. You'd think that would make me smarter about who I date, but nope, still falling for guys who flake. The conversation started to unravel like that, loosening, softening. He asked me about my worst date ever. I told him about a guy who brought his ex to our dinner, just to make sure we had chemistry. Theo told me about the time he accidentally hooked up with a guy who turned out to be the DJ for his sister's wedding. We laughed. Hard. The kind of laughter that makes your chest ache a little. Not just from the sound, but from how good it feels to let something out. At some point, I noticed the way his eyes kept flicking to my face when I spoke, the way he smiled with his whole mouth, and how he didn't look away when we locked eyes. The energy between us had shifted. Not just banter. Not just boredom. Something quieter. Something unspoken. Mind if I ask you something a little, I don't know, personal? Theo said suddenly, voice low. Sure, I replied. After all, we're elevator soulmates now. He smiled but didn't laugh. His eyes didn't leave mine. Do you ever feel like you've gotten so good at being alone that it's starting to scare you? The question hit me harder than I expected. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I exhaled slowly, eyes on the dim ceiling lights above us. Yeah, I said finally. All the time. I looked at him. It's weird, right? Like you keep yourself busy. Work, gym, errands, friends when you can. But underneath all of it is this quiet part of you that just doesn't expect to be seen anymore. Theo nodded, slow and silent. His expression had softened, his posture more open now. I used to think I was just picky, he said. But now I think I'm just afraid. Like if someone really saw me, everything, that'd be too much. Or not enough. We weren't joking anymore. The mood had shifted completely. And still, it didn't feel uncomfortable. If anything, it felt like shedding weight I didn't know I was carrying. He leaned his head back, staring up. I think I've been pretending for a long time. Going to parties, smiling at the right moments, making people laugh. But it's all surface. You know? It's like I'm hosting a show no one actually watches. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, I watch. He looked over at me. Surprised, maybe. Or something else. I said, suddenly nervous. I know what you mean. About pretending. But sitting here with you, this doesn't feel fake. Theo was quiet. His eyes held mine a second longer than before. Yeah, he said softly. It doesn't. We were closer now. I could feel the warmth of his shoulder, just inches from mine. In the stillness of the elevator, I noticed the sound of our breathing. Then he whispered. 5 minutes, I blinked. Till midnight? He nodded. According to the last time my watch updated. Something in the air shifted again. Slower, heavier, like the moment was folding in on itself. I haven't kissed anyone on New Year's in 4 years, he said. Same, I replied. It always felt like too much pressure, or I was with the wrong person. He looked at me. I don't think you're the wrong person. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just looked back at him. He leaned in a little, not enough to close the distance, just enough to let me know it was okay if I did. My heart thudded in my chest. 3 minutes. I didn't need a countdown. Not for this. The elevator didn't move. The lights didn't flicker. The world outside might as well have been frozen. Inside, though, something had shifted. Something was happening. Theo was still leaning slightly toward me, his shoulder just barely brushing mine now. His breath was steady but shallow, like he was trying to stay calm, but something was pulling at him. Pulling at both of us. I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at me the way he did in that moment. Like they were seeing something worth staying for. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. If this elevator doesn't move in the next 3 minutes, we're starting the year in here. I nodded, forcing a smile. Could be worse. Oh, yeah? He asked. I swallowed. Yeah, I could be stuck with someone who chews with their mouth open. Or who still thinks cryptocurrency is a personality. That got a real laugh out of him. Warm, slightly husky. The kind that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He leaned back a little, but didn't shift away from me. He said, more serious now, I didn't expect to spend my New Year's with a guy the first just met, but I'm glad it's you. I wasn't used to that kind of honesty. Not on dates. Not with friends. Definitely not from strangers. But I believed him. Something about the way he said it. Low, open, not trying to charm me, just felt real. I looked down at the floor between us. My voice came out a little smaller than I intended. You know what's weird? I was planning to leave that party before midnight, just sneak out, walk home in the cold, maybe fall asleep watching reruns. Same, he said. I was going to leave right after I dropped off the wine. We looked at each other then, both of us realizing we were exactly where we hadn't planned to be, but maybe exactly where we needed to be. Theo glanced at his watch again. 1 minute. 1 minute until midnight. 1 minute until the calendar turned and the world screamed fresh start and new beginnings, and this year will be different. 1 minute until the moment where everyone either kisses someone or pretends they don't care. He looked at me again. Can I tell you something before the year ends? I nodded. I didn't think I'd feel anything tonight. I've been kind of numb for a while, you know? Like going through the motions, showing up, saying the right things. But this, he gestured around at the elevator, this weird little glitch in the universe, it cracked something open in me. He paused. He made me feel something again. I blinked hard. My chest felt tight, but in that strange way where emotion swells. Not like sadness, more like relief. Like someone finally saying the thing you've been too afraid to ask for. I didn't know what to say, so I just said the truth. Me too. Theo looked down at his watch one last time. 10 seconds. We both went quiet. Not out of nerves, but because something unspoken was already building between us. We weren't counting aloud, but we felt every second. 9. 8. 7. Our shoulders were touching now. 6. 5. 4. His hand brushed against mine on the floor. 3. 2. 1. And then we leaned in. No dramatic music, no fireworks. Just a soft kiss in a quiet elevator while the world outside cheered and exploded and counted and kissed. But in here it was still. Gentle. Sure. He tasted like whiskey and winter air and something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. When we pulled back, he didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just looked at each other. Both kind of stunned. Like we'd just crossed some invisible line neither of us had meant to find but weren't sorry to have stumbled over. Theo rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry, was that? No, I said quickly. Don't apologize. Okay, he breathed out. Good. I leaned back against the wall, a slow grin spreading across my face. Not the worst way to start a year, he laughed. Honestly? Best one I've had in a while. We fell into a quiet again, but it was softer now. Warmer, like something had been exchanged between us, something more than a kiss. Outside, the world was likely erupting in champagne and confetti. Up on the rooftop, my friend Josh was probably halfway through his third shot, making resolutions he wouldn't remember. And yet here I was, in a broken elevator with a stranger named Theo, feeling more seen than I had in months. Do you think they'll get us out soon? I asked, half teasing. Theo shrugged, still smiling. I kinda hope not. There was something surreal about the quiet that followed midnight. No countdown, no clinking glasses, no confetti. Just the hum of elevator lights and the faint buzz of celebration coming through the walls from distant floors. If I listened closely, I could hear the thud of bass from some apartment, the sound of people yelling Happy New Year in overlapping bursts. But none of that reached where we were. We were in a kind of pocket. Like time had folded over us, and we were in the crease. Theo stretched his legs out, still sitting beside me on the floor. His knee knocked into mine and stayed there. I didn't move. You ever feel like the best moments in life are the ones you couldn't plan, even if you tried? He asked. I let out a soft chuckle. Yeah, and also the ones you're most afraid to trust. He looked over. Why afraid? I hesitated. Because sometimes the good moments are just pauses before something falls apart. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned his head back against the wall, tilting it just enough so our faces stayed angled toward each other. I know what you mean, he said eventually. I've been there. His tone was calmer now, slower, like we weren't in a hurry anymore, like we both understood that we didn't need to fill the space with noise. After a minute, I asked, What happened? Theo glanced at me. His face didn't change, but his hand shifted, fingers brushing against mine again. I was with someone last year. Thought it was real. We were planning to move in together, actually. I even went apartment hunting with him on weekends. What happened? He sighed. I think he was in love with the idea of us, not me. I did. Everyone liked us together. We were the couple, and I kept telling myself we were fine. But he wasn't really seeing me. Not all the way. He didn't say the rest, but I didn't need him to. I knew what it felt like to shrink yourself, to be polite and easy and likable until you weren't even sure who you were anymore. I'm sorry, I said. He nodded once, like he wasn't expecting sympathy but appreciated the quiet acknowledgement anyway. What about you? He asked. Any exes I should be jealous of? I smiled softly. Not lately. It's been over a year since I was in anything serious. After that ended, I just sort of stopped trying. Got tired of starting over. Same, he said, voice quieter now. The silence came again, but it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. He shifted, leaning his shoulder into mine this time, head tilted to rest lightly against mine. It was subtle, warm, real. Outside, more noise, shouts, fireworks, bass. Someone blew a whistle. Then a loud bang that echoed like a firecracker right outside the elevator shaft. Theo flinched slightly, his body instinctively pulling a little closer. "You okay?" I asked, softly. He nodded. "Yeah, just wasn't expecting that." "Welcome to 2026, I said dryly. That made him laugh again, and he stayed close, his head still angled against mine. His voice, when he spoke again, was nearly a whisper. I didn't realize how much I needed this. I turned slightly to look at him. "This?" I asked. He met my gaze. "Connection. I've been walking around like a ghost, talking to people, working, doing the usual, but not feeling anything. I'd kind of forgotten what it was like to just sit with someone and feel safe." The way he said it, soft and unguarded, made something twist in my chest. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch again and nodded slowly. Then, instinctively, I turned my hand over on the floor and let his find mine. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. His fingers curled into mine like they'd done it before. I stared at our hands, our palms pressed together, and for a moment I forgot we were sitting on a cold elevator floor. Forgot we'd only met an hour ago, forgot how much of my life I'd spent avoiding this kind of vulnerability. There was something about the closeness, not just physical, but emotional, that felt dangerously comforting. Like once you let someone this close, they could ruin you. But maybe they could also heal you. I cleared my throat, my voice coming out hoarse. When they open these doors and the night goes back to normal, what happens then? Theo didn't let go of my hand. He looked at me, brows drawn slightly, serious. "That depends," he said. "Are you going to disappear like a ghost too?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't want to." He leaned in then and kissed me again. This time it was slower, more intentional. His thumb brushed over mine. His other hand found my jaw, fingers light against my skin. There was no rush in it, no need to impress. Just two people, lost in this strange, unexpected stillness. When we pulled apart, our foreheads touched. He whispered, "I don't want to either." And for the first time in a long time, I believed someone when they said that. After the kiss, we just stayed there, forehead to forehead, fingers tangled, not speaking. I didn't want to break the moment. It wasn't about passion or even attraction anymore, though that was there, no doubt. But this was something deeper, like we had both reached some soft, wordless agreement not to bullshit each other. Not tonight. Theo exhaled slowly, his breath brushing against my skin. "This feels unreal," I smiled. "It kind of is." He leaned back finally, his eyes studying me like he was memorizing everything, even though we barely had anything to go off, just our names. A couple of stories. A broken elevator and a new year. "Mark," he said softly, and there was something about hearing him say my name that made me sit up straighter, like I needed to really be there now. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Go ahead." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you think this would have happened if the elevator hadn't gotten stuck?" I looked at him, really looked. "Honestly?" He nodded. "I think we would have ridden up, smiled politely, gone our separate ways, and maybe thought about each other for 5 minutes after." His eyes didn't waver. "And then forgotten?" I paused. "No," I said. "I don't think I would have forgotten." He looked down at our joined hands. "Neither would I." Something about that admission made my chest tighten in the best way, because it wasn't dramatic or romanticized. It was just true. We stayed that way for a while. Legs stretched out, shoulders leaning in, our bodies taking up more space together than they would have dared to in any other context. We talked about little things, favorite places to eat, what kind of music we listened to when we felt off. I told him I journaled sometimes, but never read anything I wrote. He said he used to draw in college before work took over his brain. He worked late nights, sometimes until 2 or 3. I told him I used to too, before I started burning out and learning the hard way that burnout doesn't care about ambition. It wasn't a dating profile exchange. It was honest, slow, and stripped down. The kind of conversation you can only have when you both know there's nowhere to go. Then, without warning, the elevator let out a heavy groan. We both froze. A second later, the overhead light flickered again, and this time, brighter. Then came the ding. Floor 4 lit up, and the hum of machinery kicked in. We sat there, still holding hands, as the elevator lurched upward again. Slow and jerky, but unmistakably alive. Theo didn't move. Neither did I. We were both staring at the floor numbers as they ticked upward, like watching the end of something we hadn't asked for, but had started to need. 5th floor. Then 6th. I swallowed hard. You still going to your sister's? He glanced at me. I was going to ask you the same. The elevator stopped. Ding! Floor 17. My stop. The doors didn't open right away. Just a pause. A final breath. Then, the split. Theo's hand slid away from mine, slow but certain, like he didn't want to but knew we had to move. I stood up first, heart pounding. The doors opened to a hallway filled with voices and distant music, the edge of a party, one I had no interest in walking into now. I turned to face him. He was still sitting, looking up at me like he wanted to say something but didn't want to rush it. I started, but the words jammed in my throat. Do you want to come with me? I mean, not to the party, just anywhere else. Theo stood up, slowly, brushing imaginary dust from his coat. His smile was soft, warm. Sure. Yeah, he said. I do. We stepped out together, and I could feel the cool air of the hallway hit my skin like the outside world, reminding me we weren't in our little time bubble anymore. But his presence beside me felt solid, real. The elevator door started to close behind us. Theo glanced at it, then at me. Guess we made it out. Yeah, I said, but I don't think we left anything behind. He nodded, and then we walked down the hallway side by side, into the buzz of a new year that, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel so lonely. We didn't go to the party. We didn't need to say it out loud. It was like we both knew stepping into that rooftop scene, full of plastic champagne flutes and strained small talk, would ruin whatever it was we'd just found. So instead we walked. Down the hall, past the elevator shaft that had briefly trapped us, past muffled laughter and top 40 hits, past the stairwell glowing under dim emergency lighting. We didn't even check where we were going. It just felt better to keep moving. Theo's hand brushed against mine a few times as we walked, like he was checking if the closeness was still allowed now that the doors had opened. Eventually, I just reached over and laced my fingers through his. He didn't say anything, just squeezed once, like a quiet thank you. The building was mostly silent outside of the party floors. On 14, we found a small lounge tucked at the end of the hallway, one of those weird, unused common areas that most tenants forget exists. A long window overlooked the city skyline, and someone had left a string of fairy lights taped around the ceiling. A few mismatched chairs and a coffee table sat in the middle. It looked like a half-hearted attempt at luxury, but it was empty, and warm, and quiet. Here? Theo asked, glancing at me. I nodded. Yeah, feels like ours now. He laughed, and we stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind us, and it was like stepping into a softer version of the world. No chaos, no countdown, just us. He dropped his coat over one of the chairs and sat down by the window, pulling his knees up like a kid getting comfortable. I followed, sitting beside him, close enough that our thighs touched. For a while, we just stared out at the city. The sky was cloudy, but we could still make out the bright bursts of fireworks in the distance, little flashes of red and gold lighting up the fog. Below, traffic moved in slow pulses, headlights blinking through the night. You know what's weird? Theo said finally, voice low. I feel like we've known each other longer than we have. I nodded slowly. Same. It's like this weird fast-forward effect. Like the elevator made time bend. Exactly, he said. I've been on dates where I talked for 3 hours and walked away feeling nothing. But tonight, he trailed off. But I knew what he meant. It felt different, I said. Yeah, he breathed. It really did. I leaned back against the wall and tilted my head to look at him. The light from the fairy string caught in his hair, giving him a faint gold halo. He looked peaceful, but alert, like he was trying to be present for every second of this, in case it all slipped away too fast. I don't want this to be a one-night thing, I said before I could second-guess myself. Theo turned his head toward me. It doesn't have to be, he said. I smiled a little. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, voice steady. I know that you didn't try to pretend tonight. You didn't try to impress me. And when I opened up, you didn't flinch. That counts for something. I looked down at my hands. I'm not great at the beginning stuff, I admitted. I usually overthink it, self-sabotage before it can go anywhere. Theo reached over, placed a hand lightly on my knee. Then let's not overthink it, he said. Let's just sit here, keep talking, and see where it goes. The simplicity of that, let's just sit here, undid something tight in my chest, because I realized I didn't want anything more right now. Not labels, not plans. Just this, the closeness, the honesty. The feeling that, for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to be more to be enough. We stayed in that lounge for what felt like hours, talking about nothing. Everything. We swapped worst job stories. Weird childhood fears. What we wanted from the year ahead. I want to stop pretending, Theo said. I want to stop showing up for other people's expectations and actually figure out what makes me feel alive again. I nodded. I want to stop avoiding connection just because I'm scared of losing it. I want to stop ghosting myself. He smiled at that. That's a good one. Ghosting yourself. Well, I said, nudging his shoulder, I guess tonight we both kind of came back to life. We looked at each other, and even though no one said it, I think we both knew we'd remember this night for a long, long time. Not because of the elevator, but because of who we'd been willing to be inside it. Real, honest, unarmored. When we finally left the lounge, it was almost 3 a.m. The city was quieter now, streets slick with rain. He offered to walk me to the subway, but I stopped him halfway down the block. You want to come back to mine? I asked, gently. No pressure, no expectations, just to keep talking. To not say goodbye yet. Theo didn't even hesitate. Yeah, he said, I'd like that. We took a car back to my place. Neither of us said much during the ride. But it wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind of quiet that settles in when words feel unnecessary, like the weight of the night had already said what needed saying. Theo sat beside me in the back seat, his knee brushing mine every few seconds when the car hit a bump or turned a corner. I didn't move. I didn't want to. The driver dropped us outside my apartment just before 3:30 a.m. The air was damp and everything felt washed clean, like the whole city had been hit with a reset button while we were stuck between floors. Theo followed me up the stairs without hesitation. No nerves. No awkward lingering at the doorway. It wasn't like bringing someone home after a bar. It felt mutual, like we were continuing a conversation, not starting something new. Inside, I flipped on a few lamps, tossed my keys in the dish by the door, and watched him take in the space. My apartment wasn't much. Clean, quiet, lived in. Books stacked on side tables. A hoodie tossed over the couch. One of those places that felt like a pause button in the middle of the city. I like it, he said, toeing off his boots near the entry. It feels calm, I shrugged. Yeah, it's kind of my cave. He smiled, moving into the living room and sitting on the edge of the couch. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed 2 glasses of water, and joined him, handing him one. He took a sip, then set the glass down on the coffee table, looking at me. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, just weirdly grounded. He tilted his head. Good weird? Very good weird. We sat there for a while. I put on a low playlist, some indie acoustic thing I usually forgot I even liked. The music filled the space between us, soft and unintrusive. Theo shifted to face me, one leg tucked under him. I meant what I said earlier. I looked at him. That I don't want this to be a one-night thing, he added. Even if it's slow, even if it's just getting to know each other. I don't want to leave here and pretend this didn't matter. I felt something settle in my chest when he said that, like I could finally let go of the instinct to brace for disappointment. Me neither, I said, and then we were quiet again, but it was loaded now. In a good way, like the atmosphere between us was thick with permission. I leaned in first this time. The kiss was softer than before, less charged. More like a whisper, a way to say I see you, still. He kissed me back, slow and patient, like we weren't in a hurry for anything. His hand came up to rest on my chest, fingers spreading lightly over the fabric of my shirt. Just a touch. Just enough to make me aware of every breath. When we pulled apart, he didn't move far. Our foreheads pressed together again, like they had in the elevator. Like we had returned to that moment but carried it forward now. You're warm, he murmured. You're shaking, I said, half a whisper. He let out a breath, smiling. I think I'm just coming down from the adrenaline of the whole night. Yeah. The elevator. The whiskey. The existential conversations. He chuckled. And the kiss at midnight. That too. Theo leaned into me then, resting his head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around him instinctively. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't performative. It was real. Honest. A kind of closeness that felt earned, not forced. We sat like that for a long time, not speaking. At one point, I felt his breathing slow, a softness in the way his body settled. He was falling asleep, right there on my shoulder, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I tilted my head against his, closed my eyes. Outside, the city kept humming. But inside that small apartment, two people who were strangers just hours earlier had found something quieter, simpler, something true. We didn't need fireworks. Or parties. Or perfect resolutions. Just one night where we didn't have to pretend. I woke up with Theo still asleep on my shoulder, his body curled slightly into mine like he'd been trying to stay close even in his dreams. The living room was dim, early morning light filtering through the blinds in soft, uneven lines. That gray-blue kind of daylight where everything feels suspended, gentle, undecided. For a moment I didn't move. I just sat there, breathing with him, letting the reality settle. We'd met less than 10 hours ago. 10 hours since I stepped into a broken elevator on New Year's Eve. 10 hours since I started the night ready to sneak out early and go back to being numb. 10 hours since I looked at someone and felt something click in a way I didn't quite understand, but couldn't ignore. I shifted slightly to ease my arm out from under him, and Theo stirred, eyes blinking open, slow and squinty. "Morning," I whispered. He blinked again, then gave a half smile, voice still scratchy with sleep. "We didn't move." "Nope," I said. "Fell asleep like a couple of old men watching the news." He laughed quietly and sat up, rubbing his eyes. His hair was a mess and his shirt had bunched up a little around his waist, and I'd never seen someone look more disarmingly human. He looked around like he was reorienting to where he was, then back at me. I wasn't dreaming, was I? I shook my head. "You were here." He stretched a little, then glanced out the window. "Looks like it's still early. Barely any light." "It's New Year's Day," I said. "World's probably still hungover." He leaned back again, hands behind his head, exhaling. "I'm glad I didn't go to my sister's." I smiled. "I'm glad I didn't make it to the rooftop." We didn't need to dissect it further. Some things don't need translation. The meaning was there, quiet but firm. We were supposed to meet like this. Theo eventually got up to use the bathroom, and I threw together some half-decent coffee. We drank it, standing in the kitchen, still barefoot, still in yesterday's clothes. Somehow it didn't feel awkward. If anything, it felt like the start of something small and soft, something that didn't need to be rushed. We talked a little more, but the conversation had changed. It wasn't about revealing truths or unpacking baggage anymore. It was about normal things, plans for the day, breakfast cravings. If we were too old to still be eating leftover pizza in the morning, Theo asked if I liked hiking. I asked if he really hated Taylor Swift or was just trying to sound edgy last night. He admitted he secretly loved All Too Well, but only the 10-minute version. By 9 a.m., he was slipping his boots back on by the door. Not to disappear, but just to go home, shower, reset. He promised to text me. Not in a vague, let's hang sometime way, he said. Like, actual texting. With verbs and times. I grinned. Good. I like my plans with verbs. He looked at me for a second longer, then leaned in and kissed me. Gentle, warm, like it was just an extension of everything we'd already said without words. When he pulled back, his eyes lingered on mine. This felt real, Mark. It was, I said, and I meant it. He stepped out into the cold morning air, and I stood in the doorway watching him walk down the steps. He turned at the bottom and waved, then disappeared around the corner. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It was the new year, and for once I wasn't starting it pretending everything was fine or promising to be better or tougher or different. I was just open to whatever came next. And maybe that was enough.